Charger Nation, welcome back to the Charger Leadership Academy. This week's guest is a women's soccer alum, Nicole Pacapelli. How are you today, Nicole?
Good, John. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. We like to kick things off here with a leadership quote of the week. I'm going to give mine, and then Nicole, at the end of the episode, I'm going to ask you to give your favorite leadership quote as well. So mine is from a man named Minor Myers Jr., and it goes like this. It goes, "Go out into the world and do well, but more importantly, go into the world and do good." So that's my leadership quote of the week. I expect you, Nicole, to beat that with your quote here at the end of the episode. Okay.
All right, I'll think of it.
All right. So let's start things by telling us a little bit about how you arrived at UNH, what the recruiting process was like, and why you were drawn to Charger soccer.
Yeah, definitely. So I am originally from West Haven, Connecticut. So I grew up there, lived there my whole life. It's actually funny. Growing up 7 minutes down the road, I never wanted to go to New Haven. Wasn't even an option. Didn't think of it. Way too close. So I was actually originally recruited by the previous New Haven staff. I played on CFC, which was my club team growing up. And we played in a Spring 77 tournament on campus. And I was coached by Laura Duncan, who is now the current coach. So she was my club coach for 2 years leading up to college. And I got a phone call afterwards, and New Haven have an interest recruiting me. So that's how that initially started. Next thing you know, I was on campus, and from what I can remember, Selena, who was actually the grad assistant at the time, New Haven Hall of Famer, one of probably arguably one of the best players to come through our program. She took me on a tour around campus. I loved it. I couldn't believe that this was in my backyard, and I had never known that this is what New Haven was. I love the idea of experiential learning, and I know New Haven really focuses on that and embraces that hands-on learning, and I thought that was great. So there was only one problem. I didn't want to go to school so close to home. So I ended up going to Stonehill College, which was one of the first schools I visited. I fell in love with the school. I actually went to school with one of my best friends. She played softball. I was so excited to go. I couldn't wait to be there. Preseason started. Everything was all well and good. And then about a few weeks in, I just wasn't as happy as I thought I was going to be. I didn't love it as much. So I think there was two specific defining moments. One was definitely, I looked in the stands one game. It was a midweek game, and there was not a single member of my family in the stands. And growing up in West Haven, always playing in front of my family, my entire family lives in West Haven. It was always my parents, my sister, my brother, my grandparents, aunts, uncles. And when no one was there, I just remember this feeling like my heart just sunk. I can't even explain to you what that was like. And I crumbled, and I've never played a soccer game in front of. It sounds so trivial, but it meant a lot to me that they've made an impact or made it adamant to come to my games growing up. So that was really upsetting. And then the second one I remember, so now Duncan got the job at the time already. We were playing New Haven. It was the big New Haven game. We bantered back and forth for a while leading up to this. And it was all well and good. And I remember we lost Stonehill, 9 minutes left in the game. Monica Yanez, actually. She scored the game-winning goal, and she happened to be we call her kind of like a hometown hero. We grew up playing together. We played together our whole life. She was my co-captain in high school. And I remember after the game, embarrassingly enough, crying in the opposing coach's arms, being Dunky. And I was like, this is so embarrassing. And then I was like, why did Monica have to score? And I definitely remember saying that. And I then proceeded to just say how sad and unhappy I was where I was. And next thing you know, I was lucky enough to have the opportunity to come back to New Haven and come play back home in the spring of 2011. And I'm so grateful. There's nothing like the West Haven community, and being a Westie and being a college athlete in your hometown, it was just a great experience. And like I said, that's how I got to New Haven. So a little bit different of a story there.
Yeah, and you went from New Haven then into a coaching career currently at Binghamton University. You've had a couple of other stops along the way. Did you always know that you were going to be a coach, or kind of when did you develop that passion?
I didn't. So when I went to school, well, backtrack a little bit. In high school, I started coaching a few camps. So actually, shout out to Pete Trenchard and Christine Huber, who it's also her birthday today. So happy birthday, Huber. They started my coaching career, letting me coach in a few of their camps. So that's where that began. And then I obviously love the game and the ability to give back to the game. Once I got to college, I was always going to be a teacher. So I had a few teachers growing up that made a huge impact on my life. And my aunt was actually a teacher, now a principal. So I was going to be a science teacher. So once I got into college, took a few science classes. I specifically remember getting to organic chemistry. And I was like, I don't like science enough anymore to go through with this. So I changed my major to nutrition and dietetics. Being a student athlete, it was an easy switch. Just I wanted to focus on taking care of my body, but at the end of the day, that didn't really set me up for what I wanted to do next. So obviously thinking about that, I was lucky enough to have such a great relationship with my coach that I was in and out of the office all the time. I think Coach Fallon and Coach Hotaling at sometimes were like, why is this kid here? Like, I was definitely an office rat, but I always just wanted to chat, and I was interested in what she was doing. And I think the more time I spent, the more interested I became. And I would just ask questions, and being in and around the office, sometimes she'd give me some work to do. And the reality is there's no one in my life that's given me more of their time and energy either. So I think realizing that and seeing that was like, wow, kind of like the aha moment. Like, I want to do this, and I want to have the same impact that she had on me for my players. And I know I was a pain in the ass some days for sure, but hey, it was worth it. It's my career, so it's definitely how that began.
So you describe yourself as kind of an office rat, watching film or just talking about, you know, whatever it is that she was planning for the game or for practices that day. Did you consider yourself kind of an extension of a coach on the field, or in a larger term, did you think of yourself as a leader among your team, and how did that develop throughout your career?
Yeah, definitely. I think I grew more into that leadership role quickly. Coming in as a transfer freshman, I didn't know exactly what that was going to be like as a transition, but I did know my personality, and I knew who I wanted to be as a player, and I knew I was coming back to play for Coach Duncan, and that meant a lot to me, and I was coming back to make her proud. So quickly, I transitioned into a very committed player, and then we talk about now the different types of players, now that I've grown and I understand coaching a little bit more, about being compliant and committed, and then something called being compelled. And the difference, I think, for me between being a committed player and a compelled player is that a compelled player is someone who's committed but has a magnet to them. So they're not only leading themselves, but they're now focusing on how they're leading others and leading the rest of their teammates, and they're bringing others with them. So I think over the course of those next 3 years, I really developed into someone who was just all in, borderline obsessive, to be fair, if I'm going to be honest, but it defined who I was, and I got so much gratification over just getting better every single day and being the best player I could be. And I think that leadership by example and having a bit of a vocal personality definitely influenced some of our program for sure.
I've never heard leadership be described in that way. That's interesting. The difference between being a committed player, or just a committed individual, and being compelled to lead, or be compelled to lead others. Is that something that you use now with your current team?
It is. I actually got it on. So there's this podcast I listen to pretty frequently. It's called the Focus 3 podcast. It's with Urban Meyer and then Tim and Brian Kite. And they actually developed this equation that I can talk about at some point, but it's E plus R equals O. So it's your events plus the response equals the outcome. And the only thing you have total control over is your response. So working on that, we kind of categorize some of these types of players, and the one after being compliant is cynical. So as a program, we obviously don't want any cynics. And being compliant is just being able to just do what you have to do to get the job done. And then we try to get kids into that committed category, and there's those few that can be compelled, and we push them towards that. So that's definitely something that as a staff we talk about for sure. And the more compelled kids you have, the more you're going to move in that right direction. Definitely.
So I can't help but bring it up because it's on everyone's mind now. If you think about the E plus R equals O equation, right now the event that everyone is going through is COVID, and for soccer players and programs in particular, not having a fall season, right? So I guess the next step would be, what is your R? What's your response to not having a season, not knowing when your next game might be, or if you're going to play in the spring or not? How have you handled that with your team, and what would you expect to be an appropriate response to get to the outcome that you really want?
I'm laughing because I think I've said this statement to my girls a couple of times. Guys, I'm so proud of you because you are handling this much better than I think I would have as because I couldn't fathom it. And I feel for the kids and what everyone is going through. And I know sports aren't the end of the world, but it means a lot to have these 4 years and to have a really great student athlete experience. So I think right now our kids are doing great. They're so positive, and we really just focus on their responses in every aspect of it. And they talk about in the podcast different R factors. So there's 6 different types of ways that you can respond and be disciplined with your responses and control your responses versus just living off autopilot and having just default responses off of emotion, which I think is where I've grown a lot in my career from being a younger coach now. But yeah, it's something that we really do emphasize, and it's been great for sure. I'm super proud of them. Super proud.
So other than being a guest on the Charger Leadership Academy, which I'm sure is one of your highlights to date, especially in the past few years, how else are you engaging your team, and how have you kind of stayed in touch with your players?
So over the past month and a half, actually, we got to be back on the field, which was great. We did get shut down like the most of the schools around again, just a little bit of a pause, but we've definitely found ways to engage. I've actually developed, we have a group of team leaders, a group of 6 team leaders, and then we have a leadership development group within our program. And I've been working with them. I meet with our team leaders every week, and we've been reading the team captain's manual together. So I've been going through that individually, just a quick 30-minute Zoom meeting, talking about them personally and their goals, and working to just help them grow off the field, because that's where we are, off the field. And then from our leadership development group, it's just a bunch of kids who are more interested in leadership roles, and they're a little bit younger. And we're actually reading The Power of Positive Leadership by John Gordon. I drew a blank for a second. It's right here. I had to look for it. But The Power of Positive Leadership by John Gordon. So we're reading that, and we're meeting bi-weekly, just having general discussion. It's a group of 6 of them, and kind of just like a book club. So we've definitely been doing that, trying to get creative. We did a pumpkin contest, those types of things. But it really just is about just the development off the field right now, because it's nothing that we can control. And I think soccer is so much more than a game. It's developing your character and your skills and setting you up for life after college. And right now, without soccer, this could be the perfect time. And that's, I guess, just really what we're focusing on.
So how are you as an individual using this time to grow, outside of, obviously you're trying to develop leaders among your team and your players, but how are you using this time to grow as an individual?
I've definitely read more books than I think I've read in my entire life this past year. I love the John Gordon books, so I think I've read almost all of them. And that has been huge for me. I hate to say I've never been a huge reader, and it's only because I can't sit still long enough. I'm all over the place. But with that being said, I have had the ability to sit down and get into a good book and just learn more things. And then as well as there's been a lot of professional development opportunities, of course, that we try to sit on. I can't say staring at the computer all day is necessarily anything I love, but there's been quite a few engaging opportunities for sure. So just trying to grow and stay connected to the girls. I mean, that's why we do this is for the relationships with the kids. So that's really most important to me. So just staying in contact with them and building those relationships. So when we do get back on the field, we'll just be that much better.
Well, as we close up here, I know we've promised our loyal followers a leadership quote from you. So if you don't mind sharing your favorite leadership quote to close us out.
Yeah, so I actually have quite a few quotes in my office, but this one is probably one of my favorite leadership ones. I did look up who it's from, Ray Kroc. The quality of a leader is reflected in the standards they set for themselves. I find that to be a really important quality of a leader, just due to the fact I don't think that you can ask anyone to do anything that you're not willing to do. And in order to get someone to the next step in their life and to lead them forward, you have to be willing to do it as well. And I think that's why I love that one. So keep those standards high.
Thanks for sharing, and thanks for coming on the Charger Leadership Academy, Nicole.
No, thank you for having me. It's awesome.
All right, you have a good one, and thanks everyone for joining today's episode of the Charger Leadership Academy.